Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Michael Zuber, one rental at a time. As mentioned in the daily financial news this morning, we have the one and only Mr. Greg Dickerson. How you doing, sir?
Doing great. Michael, how are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you very much for giving us time. Your experience is always welcome and very key this morning. The sentiment for National Association of Home Builders came out today, and it's down for the fourth month in a row. They talked about traffic being the lowest point of the last couple of years. They talked about sales conditions being the worst in the last couple of years. And frankly, you told us this was coming, right? You have a history of building both kind of the mom and pop home, but also some luxury stuff. And given you have been right so often, I thought maybe you should paint us a vision of what might be happening with higher rates, potentially into a recession from a builder's perspective, because I think it's going to be very important for all of us to hear.
Yeah, it's interesting. So it goes all the way back. My first experience when I bought my first home, I bought a new construction spec house in 1990. Oh. And, that was a very difficult time in the market, that late 80s, early 90s to the mid to late 90s. The market was very slow and sluggish, and it started picking up late 90s into the early 2000s. So there was about a 10-year period where we were oversupplied, weren't a whole lot of people buying, and very different financial conditions. I think we had, this would have been in the late 80s, early 90s. There were some things going on in the economy, that weren't great back then, but interest rates were almost 10%. Wow. For the 30-year fixed mortgage, and we had to get a 3-2-1 buy down. Developers were having to offer all kinds of kickbacks and incentives to get houses sold.
Okay.
So fast forward to the late 80s, early 90s, things started booming. And, really what drives the market in real estate is interest rates. I mean, that's just really what drives the market. It's all about funding, just like automobiles. People are buying payments. That's why cars cost $75,000 to $100,000 now for your average SUV or, luxury type vehicle. And even budget vehicles are in the 50s now, because you can finance them for 6 and 7 years and zero interest and all these different things. Yeah. So, housing is no different. From a builder's perspective, we know the market is shifting first when you're building developments, because that's where you get the traffic. You get the bulk of the traffic. You see real time because you're building, you understand what costs are, and you understand the effect of interest rates on, the payments that people can make. And when, the average, especially first-time home buyer and move-up buyer, are looking at houses, they're looking at what kind of payment can I afford? And then they go reverse engineer that into, when you're qualifying, how much you can spend after your down payment. And of course, your down payment affects all of that and how much you have to put down. So, now we're getting to the point to where people are starting to, see a real change in what they can afford, because interest rates have crossed 5% for the first time since probably, what was it, I don't even know if it got up to that in 2018. Did it get over 5%?
No, it's 4.94 was the high in 18. It almost got there. The last time we were over 5%, I looked it up, was 2009.
Okay. So the beginning of that was, the market started peaking 0405, and interest rates hit over 5% then, and that kind of tanked the market. And then rates dropped again. So the market started picking up, and then, 0809 is when rates started rising and, kind of collapsed the market. But of course, the lending environment was very different back then.
Lending really dried up. Yeah, that was, lending dried up. Yeah.
But that's the main reason builders, see it first, is because, it's the traffic into the new home community. So the first thing you see is traffic drops. Next thing you see is, less contracts. And then in the resale markets, you start seeing, asking prices drop a little bit. So properties will sell for less than the asking price. You'll see sellers starting to reduce prices. Inventory, will start to build. And, that 5% number is a big mental threshold, because a lot of, like you just pointed out, a lot of the buyers in the market today have never seen 5%.
Yeah. Most buyers, right? Certainly the millennials, right, who are aging into that 34-year age, which is the average purchase of your first home. They've never seen it, right? 5% to them is astronomical, which is fair, right? I mean,
it's been in the twos, recently. So it makes a huge difference in terms of what you can afford and what you can buy. And, and again, real estate's hyper local. So every market's different. And, there are still pockets, and this is just now starting. So it takes time.
Just starting. Yes.
It takes time for it to trickle down through the resale market. You'll see the builders contract and react first, because they can, because they're nimble. And they're seeing it front line. So builders are public companies, they have to post numbers, they have to post quarterlies. yeah, and report their earnings, and they have their earnings calls. So if builders start to see a sluggish market, they will unload inventory. They'll cut prices, they'll sell at cost, and they'll get inventory off the books so that they can react as the market goes.
Yeah.
Also, a lot of builders have in their contracts when they purchase land from developers like me. So if I go in and develop a subdivision of 10,000 lots, builders aren't going to come in and buy 500 here, 1,000 there, 100 here. Not like they used to pre-2009. They used to come in and just take down land so they would have a land position. Nowadays, they're contracting takedown schedules. And in their contracts, they will tie the value of that land to the market value of the houses that they're selling. And if the market starts contracting, well, then they'll back down on, what they can pay for land. So they'll just get inventory off their books so that they can react to the market as it changes. Not all builders and developers do that, but the bulk of them, especially the big ones that took a huge hit in 08, 09, that's kind of how they do it nowadays. So, that's why builders are seeing it first. They're seeing it first in costs to build the house. They're seeing it first in cost of mortgages, and they're seeing it in traffic counts and things like that.
Yeah. I want to talk about home builders a little bit more because, again, full disclosure, never built a home, I'm trying to build an ADU, and that's proven to be a freaking hassle and a half. So I haven't done any of this. So these questions might be silly. But first off, I think I want to point out that in my opinion, again, comparing kind of my last peak, which was 05, 06, 07, in my market of Fresno, California, or better yet, the Central Valley, there were builders everywhere. It's seemingly like back then, 100-track home was small, right? They were literally 300, 400, 500 track. They were doing phases like 20, 25 homes or whatever they were, much bigger. Today, it seems like a 10 home phase is big. So is it fair to say that they are managing their cash flow and their future risk a lot different, or am I just myopic and there are big land developments in other markets?
Oh yeah, there's huge. Yeah, that what you're talking about is tiny. I mean, there's subdivisions going on where you have thousands of homes,
okay,
in different phases, and they're generally building on contracts. So the way it's working right now is, builders are getting contracts before they ever even break ground.
Yeah, so they're managing their cash flow, right? It's a sold house before they
pre-sale. Okay. So they'll go in, and maybe it's a subdivision, let's say 1,000 lots, something small. That's a small subdivision, 1,000 lots.
Okay.
So 3 or 4 builders will go in, maybe 5 builders, and they'll each, take a section of that, and they'll build a model home, and then they'll use that, and they'll take contracts, and they'll build their way through, the subdivision with contracts. Very few builders are doing spec, but some are. Some will go in and just buy the lots and build spec, and they won't put it on the market till it's ready. That's usually smaller builders that do it that way.
Okay.
And then, you also have, builders that will come in, and this is a neat thing that a lot of people don't realize, and I've done it before, is where, let's say you own a house on a lot, you don't want to move, but you want a bigger, better house, and you don't want to remodel, you want a new house. So what the builder will come in and do is they'll buy it from you or provide the financing, tear your house down, they'll relocate you, put you in an apartment, whatever, tear your house down, build your dream home, and then you move back in on your existing land. So yeah, and you can do it all through them turnkey with their financing and the whole 9 yards.
Didn't know.
So there's all kinds of different ways that happens. But in terms of general subdivision work, builders are building for contracted houses. And that's where the trouble starts, because what will happen is people that qualified at the beginning, here we are now 6-9 months later, it's taking to build houses where it used to take 3 or 4 months. It's taken 6, 9, 12 months, depending on the house and the area. That individual that initially qualified, now they're not able to qualify. They can't get a permanent mortgage. So that deal comes back on the market, and if there's buyers, great. If not, the builder, lowers the price to get rid of it. So, you'll start to see a lot of contracts fall through, which we're seeing that, houses coming back on the market. And again, it takes time. Every market's different. The market I'm in is very small. I mean, we have a fraction of the houses on the market that, some of these other areas. I mean, there's population base in my area is like 60,000 people in the city, 70,000 people. We might have 30 houses on the market in the city at any given time, and maybe 100 in the county that surrounds us, where normally there'd be 500 or 600 in the county and a couple of hundred in the city. Then you go, to the neighboring city of Richmond, Virginia, which is the capital of the state. You've got 1 million people in that MSA. So there's still thousands of houses on the market, but there used to be like 5,000 or 4,000, so each area is a little bit different, but we're hearing it already start to happen, but it's going to take some time. And the higher the rates get, the quicker it'll happen. So 5% is where behavior changes. That's where you start to see a slowdown. And, in normal market conditions, again, inventory levels have been very, very tight and very limited throughout the country because of the pandemic. So it's a very different time from an inventory level standpoint than any other time in the market. So that's going to make it take a little longer for it to happen than like it did in 2017, 2018.
Yeah.
The last time rates got close to 5%, the market just kind of stopped, almost overnight. It was very, very weird.
Yeah, no, I remember. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, markets were tanking, real estate market came to a halt, and then the Fed reversed course and started dropping rates again, and then everything picked right back up. And, here we are.
Yeah. So I guess there's kind of three things that I'm taking away from this. One is watch, I'll call it canceled contracts. I don't know if that's the official word, but basically
pending sales, watch pending sales, you'll see houses come back on the market.
Yeah. Kind of watch that boomerang. The other thing to watch for, is when builders want to unload, again, back in the day when I was looking at houses, they would always give away free things, right? Like free granite upgrades, free this, free that. Again, to entice folks.
Oh yeah. I remember giving away cars back in 08 and 09. Builders were giving away cars, giving away vacations. Wow. They couldn't sell houses. And a lot of people just don't know that type of a market.
That world,
it was very different. There was a lot more inventory back in 08, 09. And there were huge subdivisions with, 10, 15,000 houses just vacant, thousands of homes just vacant sitting there. Yeah. So it was very different, but yeah, they were giving away cars, boats, vacations, all kinds of things, trying to get rid of houses.
Yeah. So for me, really watching the builders is going to be important because, again, you're right. They're collecting or aggregating traffic demand, right? They have these model homes. They're tracking every time some people comes in. They're going to see it there first. They're going to also see what their cancellation rate is. And again, they will react. I think builders this time, given the big ones all survived the last crisis. They're managing cash flow very differently. They will move first and fast, which is exactly what you told us would happen. And I think you're right.
Yeah. And the other thing that's hitting them too is cost escalation. So we still have serious supply chain constraints. So, cost of goods is going up every day. Cost of labor is going up because there's not enough labor and there's still so much pent up demand. And, I think they're saying that there's enough demand in housing right now that it would take at the current rate 10 years to build our way out of this. Now that's because of where we're at right now, because everything is contracted.
Right.
We get through the pandemic, get supply chains open back up. Labor is another problem. We've had a labor issue since, 2008, 9, when a lot of people just got out of the business and never returned. And there was nobody coming up behind them because people don't want to get in the trades these days, like they used to. And I'm telling you, anybody watching, you can make a very good 6-figure salary in the trades, working either for yourself or as a professional in the trades. It's not hard to make $100,000 a year or more as a, professional trades contractor, even working for somebody. But if you start your own business, you can easily make $200,000-300,000 a year just working by yourself in the trades.
That's awesome. Well, do us a favor, tell people where they can find you. And again, folks, Greg has a playlist. Go back and watch some of the first interviews where he talks about being a truck in a toolbox. It was a great story, and it was so great. I included it in my second book, 15 Conversations with Millionaires. It was so cool. Where can people find you?
Yeah, gregdickerson.com. That's where all of my social media links are and YouTube channel links. Go check it out.
Thanks, buddy.